Come here, baby girl. That's good stuff. It's our very first video of 2014. Say hello, everybody. So it's been 2 long months since I've seen all your beautiful faces on YouTube, and there's somebody don't like that. It's been 2 months since I've had just a moment of time to sit down and review a book with y'all. I am so sorry, but you will have to forgive me. As my very first video for 2014, I asked you if you wanted me to do a tag or a book review or any of that really fun stuff, and you all said, heck no, get back to the basics, we want to hear a book review. I picked up none other than Cherry Girl. So to kick off the new year, here is my book review of Cherry Girl by Raine Miller. As some of you may know, I actually did a book review on Miss Raine Miller's Blackstone Affair Series a few months back. And if you haven't seen that yet, don't worry, this book review won't give anything away because this is actually a half a book or a 3.5 series, if you will. So feel free to watch this video if you haven't read it, or pause, take a second, and click right here to go back to the original Blackstone Affair Series to get caught up. For those of you who did join me, in the mirror. Just a mirror. Hey, what about that? So those of you who follow me on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, or even here on YouTube know how much I loved the Blackstone Affair series. It's one of those very few books that you find in a plethora of genres that the characters truly resonate with you, and you don't have to go back and say, what were their names again? And I find myself often doing that, actually. I'll finish a book, and then the following week I'll go to do a book review. I seriously will remember the story plot, but I won't remember the character's name. This book is nothing like that. This book always stood out from the crowd for me, and this book does not let us down. What is Cherry Girl about? We know from the Blackstone Affair series that Ethan and Bryn, ladies and gentlemen, actually had a debate if I was pronouncing the character's name right, and a lot of you were like, Megan, I don't think it's Bernie. And it's so funny because being a Southern girl, I just kind of pronounce it the way I pronounce it. Sorry, Miss Raine Miller. I was saying Bernie. And actually, who better than to solve the mystery for us than Raine Miller, the author herself? She actually left me a comment on my video and told me that it actually is Bryn. So it's Bryn and Ethan. So to all of you who pointed that out for me, thanks for making me feel like a total dummy. Ethan and Bryn, the Blackstone Affair series, you had Naked, All In, and Eyes Wide Open. And we have these 3 books telling the stories of Ethan and Bryn. Now, in the course of these 3 books, we meet characters that are none other than Neil McManus and Elena, aka Cherry Girl. Now these characters play a minute role in the Blackstone Affair series. Neil is Ethan's bodyguard, if you will. He's his second in command, and he's always there to help whenever Bryn's in trouble or he needs something. He is Ethan's right-hand man. And we learned in the Blackstone Affair series that Neil served in the Special Forces with Ethan. So we always had a small look into Neil, if you will. However, who knew that Raine Miller had this genius to create such a glorious book off 2 minute characters in the series? And that's exactly what she did with the Blackstone Affair 3.5. And this is a book that's its own little book, and when I say little, it's a little over 200 pages. So it's a good sized book, but it's a piece of the Blackstone Affair series. So think of it that way. It's part of the series, but in its own separate entity, if that makes any sense. Cherry Girl is the story of Elena and Ethan and their love together. I know it sounds repetitive because I always pick out these books. This is actually something so refreshing and different because this story starts when Elena is very, very young. And a quick change in quality since my camera decided to die. Neil doesn't have a family that really cares about his whereabouts, and that's a story within itself in the book that I don't want to ruin for you. Her brother Ian befriends Neil and they kind of become brothers and also best friends. And since they're best friends, they're always around Elena. Elena, you know, just becomes in love with him, and that's something, you know, I feel like every girl can relate to. There's always this older guy because he is 5 years older than her, and you know, she's 12 and he's 17, and she loves him, but she's just a kid. You know, I remember that as myself having an older sister. My sister is 5 years older than me, so I remember her bringing home her friends and me getting all giggly over it. So it's just something that you can really relate to. But since there is that age difference, she never really tells Neil how she feels until one day he is going off to Afghanistan to fight in the war. She gives him this bracelet and tells her, you know, what the charms mean and that she'll think of him every night when he goes off and fights in the war. Then there is 9/11, and something traumatic happens to Cherry, which is also very heart-wrenching and very something people will remember. And Elena at that point is much older in her teenage years, and she kind of becomes a rebel. She does things that she wouldn't have normally done, but she always just knows that she's still in love with her Neil. Now, where does the title Cherry Girl come from? Well, Elena actually has this really red, and not my red, but red, like a ginger, hair, and he says that she's got the most beautiful hair in the world, that she will always be her Cherry Girl. So she becomes really reckless, and she just knows that she's not the Cherry Girl that Neil would remember. Before Neil leaves, he tells her, "You're utterly perfect and don't you ever change." She realizes that she has changed. She's not really proud of whom she's become. And again, I can't really tell you every detail, but the story moves on, things happen, and they end up together, which is always a wonderful part of the story. Like every story, there's got to be a point where things come out and something happens to Neil and to his Cherry Girl that end up separating them. And I have to say, this was nothing I could have thought of. I could have thought of a million things and not have thought about this happening to Neil and Elena for such a long period of time. Then we kind of move on, and I can't really tell you the end of the story from there, because if I tell you what happens, then you can guess it. So I'll leave it at things happen and they were no longer together. The best part of the book comes when you see moments of Ethan Blackstone appearance. In fact, we talk about Ethan a little bit in the book, a little in the epilogue, which I love because Bryn is expecting her baby from Eyes Wide Open. We hear from Cherry, we hear from Ethan, we hear from Francis, we hear from Benny. I mean, we hear from so many different little characters, and you're kind of like, I remember when that happened. Oh wait, did this happen? Oh my god, this is happening. It's always really fun seeing two books merged together in a story. Really, really good read. I highly suggest it. I even more suggest that you whip out your Nook or your Kindle and you go ahead and pre-order the Blackstone Affair Rare and Precious Things, which I'm so beyond excited for, you have no idea. I have to say a big thank you to Raine Miller, who's been so extremely nice to me, and she's answered any questions I've had. If you don't follow her on Twitter, you really should. She's so nice and appreciative of her fans, and that's something so rare where you don't find somebody hired to handle their social media. It's truly the author, and they're truly appreciative of you enjoying their work, so I highly suggest you go and follow her on Twitter. And then be sure you go over and stalk myself. Now, come back next week, because we're going to be going over A Million Dirty Secrets by Mrs. C.L. Parker, and we're going over this really quick because she has her On sequel coming out in just a few weeks, so I want to get you caught up so you're ready to read the sequel with me. I'm going to be reading Vampire Academy. I saw the movie trailer for it and bought it immediately. So if you're keeping up with me, I hope you purchase Vampire Academy, and then you come back next week as we go over A Million Dirty Secrets. Until next time, laters, baby.